Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as I am every Friday by Derek Brown and Pat Fitzmaurice. We are talking our Week 10 key questions. I've been saying it all week. We are into the double digits. Now we are trying to answer some key questions before this week to help everybody really make a playoff push. You got 4-ish weeks, 5-ish weeks, depending on the league you're in, before you got to lock up that playoff spot. So we're going to do our best that we can to help you all this week and every week. Quick reminder, all of our weekly consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. Also a reminder for everybody, we've been talking about it all week, the teams on bye, the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, and the Titans. Lots of good players, lots of bad defenses that we like going against. So going to make for a slightly tougher week than usual, even with just, in air quotes, 4 teams on bye. It's still a lot, but not quite 6. Still a lot of good teams there. Again, that's Cincinnati, Dallas, Kansas City, and Tennessee. Fitz, let's start off right at the very top. And we have another, I was going to say London game. It's a Europe game. It's in Germany, in Berlin this week. Falcons, Colts. I hoped we were done with these super early games. We've got one more on the slate this season. A couple good teams, though, or at least a couple interesting teams for fantasy. I want to talk about the 2 best players on these teams, though, Jonathan Taylor and Bijan Robinson. We had a question about them last week. Or 2 weeks ago, rather. And we are sitting here with them coming off of a couple of bad games again. Now, Bijan made up for it a bit in the passing game, but they rushed for 45 and 46 yards, respectively, in Week 9. So, Fitz, starting with you, between Taylor and Robinson, 2 of the 3 best running backs in fantasy, who has a better chance of bouncing back this week?
I think it's Taylor for 3 reasons. One, the Colts are favored by 6.5 points on Hard Rock bets, so Taylor and the Colts are more likely to have a run-friendly game script. 2, Taylor is the better matchup. Falcons are giving up 100.5 rushing yards per game to running backs. The Colts are only giving up 70.1 rushing yards per game to running backs. 3, Taylor gets greater rushing volume than Bijan. He's averaging 17.4 carries a game. Bijan is only at 14.8 carries a game, mostly because the Falcons have a second back they like. Tyler Algier has 63 carries this year. Colts running backs other than Jonathan Taylor collectively have 31 carries.
Debro, what do you think? Because Taylor might have more of the rushing equity, of course, but Bijan is getting the work in the passing game to kind of close that gap a bit. Who do you think bounces back this week more so?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Fitzy, and just more on the matchup. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons run defense since Week 5. I mean, outside of rushing yards, they have the 7th lowest stuff rate, and they're allowing the 11th highest yards after contact per attempt. Like, if you juxtapose that with the Colts rushing defense in the same stats, they have the 8th highest stuff rate, and they've allowed the 9th lowest yards after contact per attempt. So, I think this is easily JT.
Okay. I didn't have a lot in this game just because a lot of the guys, especially on Atlanta, are, very easy start-sit decisions for the most part. The Colts, to some degree. The one guy that I do want to follow up on, I didn't put this in the sheet, but I know you'll be prepared to talk about this, D-Row, because you've been talking about it all week, is Alec Pierce. And it's something that has become real conversation in the last few weeks on, the type of defense that he's playing. And this is a particularly good matchup for him. So do you just want to, kind of wrap up this game by talking a bit about Pierce?
Yeah, man. I mean, look, I've been talking about it for the last few weeks. It's Alec Pierce feeding families versus single high coverage, and he's going to do it again this week, man. Like, Atlanta runs top 3 rate of single high, and Alec Pierce has put up elite wide receiver 1 numbers, and I want to be very specific when I talk about this. He has put up elite per route wide receiver 1 numbers against single high coverage. Like, this guy versus single high has a 27% target share, 3.69 yards per route run, and a 32% first read share. Those are Jamar Chase level numbers on a per route basis versus single high, just to fully lay out the context for people here.
But Pierce has just generally been really good this year. He's averaging over 70 yards a game, and he is averaging, I think, over his last 3 games, over 90 yards a game. So he's just yes, single high, expect him to smash, but in other matchups too, I think Alec Pierce is starting to build more of a floor than we're used to with him.
Fitzy, I got a real quick question here, because he has finished as a top 24 wide receiver in 2 of the last 3 games. He's a guy I'm struggling with. Where do you rank him this week? How high is too high for Alec Pierce? Because with all the teams on bye, a lot of really, really good. We're thin at wide receiver this week, and I'm I keep nudging him up the ranks, man. And I'm is it like Alec Pierce versus Ted McMillan is a real conversation? Like, is it too high to push him up that high in the top 24?
I've got him wide receiver 28, which is above consensus.
I'm at 27. I'm with you. So,
the guys ahead of him, you could make a case that he, like right now, I've got him right behind Quentin Johnston and Jordan Addison. I wouldn't have an issue with moving either of those guys past or behind Pierce.
Like, I mean, Alec Pierce versus DK Metcalf is a real conversation too. People maybe not be ready to have that, but for this week it is.
Just to provide some context, he's not ranked in that range in consensus. He's in the mid-30s. He's at wide receiver 34. That is, these have a couple of the guys that played on Thursday night in there, so really it's more like wide receiver 32 of the guys remaining. But he's not up in that conversation with guys like Tedero McMillan and DK Metcalf in terms of how the consensus has it ranked. That's in half PPR scoring. So you guys are definitely ahead of consensus on that. And by the way, I very intentionally did not ask you anything about the game last night. I could not have less interest in talking about that.
I had to hold my eyeballs in my sockets because they wanted to jump out of my skull and leave the room.
Oh, man, it was just a nasty game. And I think this more goes back to the volatility of I said this a few weeks ago. Bo Nix has regressed so much
from
his rookie season. Like, he's not only just matchup sensitive, like the volatility. And I said this out on social media a few weeks ago, and then he goes out and has goes ham in the fourth quarter, and people are like, "Oh, really? Oh, you think that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think that." Like, fine, he had like the amazing quarter, and it's like, have you looked at the rest of his season? Like, he's been a roller coaster, man.
It made me think of, and I actually tweeted this before to the Fantasy Pros account like years ago, and people got mad that it was an inappropriate meme, so I didn't do it again. But it made me think of the meme with Jeffrey Dahmer where he's like, "We're gonna hang out," and he's like pointing at the TV, "We're gonna watch this, and then you can leave." And I'm like, I feel like I'm being forced to watch this game when I don't want to, against my will. It just was like, it's one of those games. It's like Colts Broncos from a couple years ago, where it's like you will remember this game for how bad it was. So
I've started a tradition trying to just keep myself sane, healthy, and energetic. And a lot of Thursday nights, like part of the game, I'm going to the gym. There's a lot of Thursday nights where I'm like, man, I really don't want to go. I want to watch the game. Didn't feel like that last night. Didn't feel like that at all. Didn't feel like I missed anything.
Well, let's go to a game that has the chance to be pretty ugly also. Saints at Panthers. Tedero McMillan has been under 50 yards receiving in 3 of his last 4 weeks, and he still has only scored a touchdown in 1 game this season. He, of course, has 2. They both came in the same game. So every other game, he has 0. ECR still has him just outside the top 20 among receivers for the week, though. He's currently at wide receiver 21. And I guess, again, if you take out Sutton, who has already played and was ahead of him, then he'd be wide receiver 20 of the guys remaining. So we all love the player, but at what point is he no longer a borderline must-start fantasy wide receiver? Because I feel like we kind of got him to that point relatively early in the year, assuming the touchdowns were going to come and that the volume was going to stay what it was. And now the yardage hasn't really been there, and the touchdowns haven't come either. So, again, we still love the player, but Debra, I'll start with you. At what point is he no longer a borderline must-start fantasy wide receiver?
We're already there, man. I mean, I've got him right now as wide receiver 27, and he's been wide receiver 35 in fantasy points per game, and Ted is doing everything that he can in his power, given the constraints of the quarterback play and the passing volume that is being allotted to him. There's nothing else he can do about it, but this Carolina Panthers offense is just strangling the life out of him. I mean, whether it's a volume conversation, whether it's crappy quarterback play, whether it's a combination, and honestly, both weekly, it's tough for Ted. And that's why I wrote it up in the primer. Like, you're looking for blurbs on Leggett and Coker, you ain't going to find them because they're not playable, man. Carolina has been so stinking run heavy that the passing volume, like Ted is the only option in the passing game that's even remotely playable. Like, since week 6, Carolina's had the second highest neutral rushing rate and overall rushing rate. So pick your poison here, whether you want to talk about bad quarterback play, whether you want to talk about no passing volume, and that, I mean, you got to run routes, you got to get targets to score fantasy points, and Ted's not able to do either one of those things, unfortunately.
He's only finished higher than wide receiver 27 in a week twice, Fitz. Those were 2 of the last 4 games, but even then, the ceiling has been wide receiver 12 and 14. Like, it hasn't been inside the top 10 or anything. Again, I know you like the player, but what do you do with him both this week and just kind of your general thoughts on Ted moving forward?
Well, generally the whole must start thing depends on league context. In a 14 or 16 team league or in a 12 team league where you start 3 receivers and 2 flexes, Tedero McMillan is most likely a must start. But in a 10 team league or a 12 team league where you only have to start 2 receivers, probably not. And the issue is really that Panthers head coach Dave Canales is trying to hide his quarterback right now. And with good reason. Bryce Young is averaging 5.7 yards per pass attempt, which is just that's a terrible number. Cam Ward is at 6.0 yards per pass attempt, and I don't think anyone is saying Cam Ward is having a good rookie year. So in his last 4 starts, Bryce Young has averaged 25 pass attempts. That is not a lot. And guess what? The Panthers have won all 4 of those games. They just beat the Packers in Green Bay, and Bryce Young had 102 yards and 11 completions. Dave Canales is just leaning into the running game, and Rico Dowdle has been a force of nature. Now Chuba Hubbard gives the Panthers, one of the best number 2 running backs in the league. So Panthers are dead last in the league in pass rate over expected at minus 7.6%. They're ultra run heavy. I thought Tedero McMillan played a really good game against the Packers last week. Bryce Young threw to him in some 3rd and long situations, and McMillan made a couple of really tough catches in tight coverage to pick up first downs. But it wasn't a good game for fantasy. 4 catches for 46 yards, and yet that was nearly half of Carolina's receiving yardage. So in a better situation, we might be ranking Tedero and McMillan as a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. I've got him ranked wide receiver 22 this week in a good matchup with 4 teams on bye.
To all this point, I want to wrap a bow on this, Worm. Go out and trade for him in Dynasty. Go out and get him because the better days are ahead, dude. Better days. I don't see a way where Carolina walks into 2026 with Bryce Young as a quarterback. Can't see it.
It's funny that you say that because I was going to follow up and ask, not in Dynasty, but I was going to say, would you want to trade him away in redraft right now? I mean, he still has a bye week coming up, so that's going to be a 0 you're going to take later. Week 17, if you make it to the championship, he has the Seahawks, who are the best defense in football. It's not like it's an easy schedule going forward, and we have all these question marks for this year. So trade for him in Dynasty, Debra, but would you trade him away in redraft?
I think it just comes down to what are you going to get for him, and I don't know if anybody's giving you more than a bag of peanuts for Tedero McMillan. And it's not a case like Fitzy and I have laid out here. Has nothing to do with his talent. His per route metrics are freaking fantastic. He's doing everything he can, but the fact that there's just not enough volume in this passing attack and the quarterback play has sucked. So I don't think you're going to get a ton for him. Now, if you were going to trade him away and lump him with another wide receiver or running back and tier up the position, then yeah, if you could do that, sure, go at it.
You might not get a ton. I think you get more than a bag of peanuts, though. I mean, he's still rest of season rankings, wide receiver 23, names like T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, Marvin Harrison Jr. You can quibble whether or not that's a worthwhile ranking, but I think people look at that and say they would give up something, even if it's not a ton of value fits.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what maybe commensurate running back value would be for him, and I can't imagine it's much more than a Jordan Mason, who's now part of a committee, or Woody Marks type. Maybe a little better than that, but you're not even getting Jalen Warren for Tedero McMillan. You're not getting.
You couldn't even get. Not to jump ahead of the next one, but I don't even think you could get. Could you get Kyle Monangai right now for Tedero McMillan? I don't even know if you can do that.
I actually think you could, because I think there are people who are going to say, oh, well, once Swift is back, he's going to go back into a timeshare and not be very startable. Again, I'm not saying that's correct or not, but I think there are people out there who would have that mindset.
Probably.
Okay. Maybe.
Well, let's get into that next game. It's Giants at Bears. We're not talking about Monangai specifically, although it was funny. I filled in on the start sit live stream yesterday with Erickson, and I can't tell you how many Monangai questions we got. It was literally every question had Monangai included in it. And I kept saying, if Swift wasn't playing, he'd be the most obvious start ever. Gets a little trickier with that. But the question I want to talk about here is actually about Caleb Williams. This stat comes from somebody named Derek Brown. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't know where he works. He's at Debro_FFB, whoever that is on Twitter /X. But this stat that I saw, which we've kind of talked about a bit on the show before, but it's kind of fun to see put into, a simple term. There have been 8 games for Caleb Williams this season. 4 times he has been QB 10 or better. 4 times he's been QB 20 or worse. He has not finished in the teens this season. He has either had a great QB 1 week or he has been totally unplayable, barring like a super deep, super flex league. So, having said that, which version, D-Bro, of Caleb are we going to get against the Giants this week?
I think you're going to get the top 10 version. And the best I can contextualize the season that we're getting from Caleb Williams right now, he's 2024 Kyler Murray. He's Kyler Murray last year. You don't know when to start him. He's either going to smash or you're going to hate the fact that you started him because of the volatility. Because he has either been a basement level QB2 or he has helped win you weeks. And a lot of this, there's a little more sneakiness with Caleb, I will say, this year because of the matchups. And he's been so matchup sensitive because he's just not an accurate passer. Like, amongst 41 qualifying quarterbacks right now, he's 28th in accurate throw rate, 30th in catchable target rate. The Giants' pass defense has been struggling, man. Like, since week 5, they're giving up the 12th most passing yards per game and the 6th highest passer rating. So I think you get good Caleb this week.
Fitz, do you agree? Like, if I put it to you as like a binary thing, like yes Caleb, no Caleb this week, is it a yes week?
If it's a binary thing, I am on the good Caleb side just barely. Can I make both cases, though?
Of course.
Please do, Fitzy.
Okay, so the case for top 10 Caleb is that the Giants are giving up the 7th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, giving up the 5th most rushing yards to quarterbacks, and Caleb likes to run. And the Bears' offensive line has been just fantastic lately. So I think that's the case for, and Paulson Adebo, one of the Giants' cornerbacks. I think he's going to be out again this week. So the case against, or maybe the case for Caleb even being outside the top 20, one, Debro said it with like the inaccuracy of Caleb's passing lately. 2, the Bears' offensive line has just been so good in the running game lately. Their last 4 games, the Bears have averaged more than 180 rushing yards per game. So maybe they just keep it on the ground against a Giants defense that's giving up 5.9 yards per carry to running backs. That's not good. And lastly, the weather forecast for Giants Bears isn't looking all that great. Like, I hate overreacting to weather, but it's going to be highs in the 30s with brisk northwest winds of like 16 miles per hour or more. So we're starting to get close to that threshold where you look at the wind as a factor, and maybe it was a little bit in Raiders Broncos, which I didn't see coming. So this could kind of go either way, I think.
Prior to the game against the Bengals, which obviously was an insane game, his previous 4 games, he combined for 2 passing touchdowns across 4 games. That's like just not, and he had 1 rushing touchdown mixed in there too to help one of those days, but just not tenable from a fantasy quarterback perspective. And but then he comes around and it's QB1. It was against the Bengals, but you kind of laid out the case of defense. He's QB 13 in ECR this week, which we know he's not going to finish there based on this stat, but slight lean towards him going higher from you guys. I do want to ask kind of a second question again on the Bears. Was week 9 the breakout for Colston Loveland, Fitz, or was it just a flash in the pan? Where is he ranked for you amongst tight ends this week?
So right now I have got him at tight end 9, even though I might move him down a couple of spots if Cole Kmet clears concussion protocol, which looks like a possibility.
Yeah.
But if last week wasn't a breakout for Colston Loveland, then maybe it was at least the start of a breakout. We obviously have to consider that he did it against the Bengals, and the Bengals just get wrecked by tight ends on a weekly basis. But Loveland is starting to play more snaps, even with Cole Kmet around. And Loveland has had at least 3 catches in 3 straight games. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think he is totally inside the tight end circle of trust yet, but he is maybe inching his way closer to that.
By the way, I want to quickly correct something that I said. I said Caleb Williams was QB 13 this week. I was still looking at the rest of season rankings from a previous conversation. He's actually QB 9 this week in the rankings. So the consensus has him with another top 10 week. I just want to make sure that I corrected myself there. Debro, on Colston Loveland, when you look at something like this where it's like, oh, hey, what a fun game, top 10 pick, has the pedigree, we're hoping to see this happen. At the same time, you could say like, well, he had a 50-yard touchdown that was kind of fluky. He broke off 3 tacklers that like makes the day look a lot better than it really was. He is tight end 10 for the week. That is for this week's rankings in half PPR. Does that sound too high, too low, or just right for you?
It's too high because I think Cole Kmet does, like to Fitzy's point, I think he does clear and I think he does play. And that the breakout for Loveland happened, and I want to be very clear about this, like over the last 2 games for the Bears, like Cole Kmet had a concussion and a back injury. So you look at week 6, and that's the last game that we have where both of these guys were absolutely healthy. And during that game, Colston Loveland had a 39% route share. Cole Kmet was at 30%. Like they were splitting the routes up. So if Cole Kmet is active, it's going to impact Colston Loveland's route share. Ben Johnson has been so stubborn about integrating these rookies at a high level. Like Luther Burden, even when he's been healthy, has not overtaken Olamide Zaccheaus. And we keep waiting for that to happen. And it's not happening. And they're winning games, so I don't think that changes. And the same thing with Colston Loveland. Like, he had a wonderful game versus the Bengals, but you talked about the flukiness, the fact that Cole Kmet got knocked out of the game very early. And then also, we can also point to the matchup this week it's not horrible, but it's not like a smash matchup for tight ends. Like, I mean, the Giants are 14th fewest receiving yards per game overall, 16th in schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to tight ends over the last 5 games. So it's okay and he can succeed, but it's not like he's playing the Bengals and you're like, all right, got to fire him up. Let's go. So I kind of lean more to the negative side only because of the other factors at play here.
Just quickly, give me your answer. Don't need to elaborate. Kyle Pitts or Colston Loveland this week, D-Bro?
Pitts, not even close. Like,
not even close.
Not
Okay.
even close.
They're close in ECR. Fitz, do you also see it as Pitts?
If Kmet plays, it's going to be Pitts for me too.
Okay. Today's show is brought.
Top 10.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Kyle Pitts is a top 10 tight end for me this week. Easy.
Top 10. Okay. Yeah. They're both inside top 10 in ECR, but very close in the back end of ECR. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably deep in the stats, injury reports, and matchups. On Hard Rock Bet, you can put your fantasy football knowledge to the test. Try your first bet on Hard Rock Bet today. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. And if you're looking for an edge before you lock in, check out the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. It's loaded with trends, streaks, and stats to help guide your picks. Numbers don't lie, and neither does the data in there. Check out the Stats Hub now. Get the edge and bet with confidence. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in Florida. It's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. Coming soon to more states too. Plus, Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. So whenever you're listening, just open the app and check out what you've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. Next game here, guys. Jaguars at Texans. No Travis Hunter. Brian Thomas Jr. banged up. Now Jacoby Myers in town. We'll see what that looks like week 1. He's been kind of the name we've talked about from this game all week. Fitz, how startable is Parker Washington against the tough Houston defense this week?
I don't really want to start any of the Jaguars receivers. And it is tough to guess at the target distribution between Parker Washington, the newly acquired Jacoby Myers, and De'Ami Brown, who's coming back from a concussion. Plus, you said it, Worm, that the Texans have a tough pass defense. Like, I've got Parker Washington ranked wide receiver 41, and even that feels too high. And just one thing about props to Hard Rock Bets. They were the only sports book I found that had a prop on Jacoby Myers receiving yardage in his first game with the Jaguars, which was at 41 and a half, I want to say. And I promptly bet the under on that.
I'll ask you this question first, Fitz, and then I'm going to ask you the same question, D-Bro, because they're very close in the flex rankings for this week. In this game, would you rather start Woody Marks or Parker Washington?
Oh, Woody Marks.
Yeah.
Okay. They're only a couple spots apart in the flex rankings and consensus. Again, that's half PPR scoring. D-Bro, you said you agree on Marks?
Yep, easy Marks. And okay. I've got Washington at wide receiver 37, and that feels too high right now. I'm probably going to bump him down some. Like, it's just...
It's exactly what consensus is wide receiver 37.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
The thing about it, and I got to dive back into him for the primer updates, because figuring out who's going to play and who's not is going to be trying to figure out what his role is, because he's flip-flopped between being a perimeter wide receiver and a slot wide receiver, depending on the matchup and depending on like who's been healthy the last few weeks. But regardless of however you slice this matchup, it's not good for Parker Washington. Like, Houston overall has given up the second fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to wide receivers overall. You splice that into perimeter wide receivers, second fewest again, ninth fewest to slot receivers. So anyway, whether they move him outside or they stick him inside, it's not going to be a good week for Parker Washington. You're really just playing volume for him as a flex play. That's it.
Just because there was kind of a quick conversation on Washington, rest of season, Jacoby Myers, where does he fit in for you guys? Now that we've had a few days to kind of ruminate on the trade and think about it and really sit with it, where does he kind of fall into your expectations? I mean, obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter will be back at some point and healthier at some point. Myers is a good player. Rest of the season, when I ask you that question, Debra, what's the first kind of number that comes to mind?
I was just pulled it up, wide receiver 49. Like, I think he's 49. Like fringe, like wide receiver 4 or 5 territory. Like, he's living somewhere in the Josh down. Like, I've actually got all these Jaguars guys like coupled together in the low 40s, high 50s. Like Myers, Washington, and Travis Hunter, because we don't know what his health outlook. Because you could take that trade and say, okay, does this mean we get Travis Hunter back and they're just trying to add to the cupboard, or is this more gloom and doom, and do we see Travis Hunter for the rest of the season? So somewhere in that low wide receiver 4, high wide receiver 5 territory, and people might think that's too low, but I mean, tell me why not?
Same range for you, Fitz?
I've got him wide receiver 50. He's right behind your guy, or right ahead of your guy, Rashad Bateman, for him. Okay. It's just like eventually Travis Hunter comes back, BTJ is there, Myers is this third piece in a not great passing attack. So like I think he's a bench player.
Yeah.
Let's go to Bills at Dolphins. Which players ranking in this game do you guys most disagree with? Fitz, we'll start with you.
I'm a little below consensus on James Cook. I mean, and this is splitting hairs because you're starting him, obviously. I've got him ranked running back 6, and consensus is running back 4. I like Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane a little more this week. And I know running backs have been carving up the Miami defense this year, but Cook has this ankle issue that caused him to miss practice on Wednesday and send people into a panic and be speculating about Ray Davis or Ty Johnson being the preferred backup. But maybe with the ankle thing, the Bills pull back on Cook's workload a little bit. And Cook only has 2 targets and 1 catch in his last 4 games. Like, he isn't adding anything as a receiver lately. So obviously the rushing numbers have been sensational, but that's where he is doing all his business.
This could prove to be, poor analysis by me. I'm not really worried about the foot ankle stuff, just because like what it seems like from I was seeing some of these videos on Twitter, like that this happened earlier in last week's game, and he still rushed for 27 like attempts in that game, so they didn't seem to be dialing it back in the moment. Now maybe like you have the adrenaline going and it starts to feel worse later in the week, but I'm not that worried about it. And even if he does have a limited workload, like how many rushes do you need against this Miami run defense to have a great day? If you're James Cook, I don't think that many. So obviously, you still have him inside your top 6. You're not fading James Cook, but just compared to some of these other elite options that you might have. Debra, what do you think? Who's the player that you are either fading or more aggressive on ranking highly in this game?
So since week 2, I'm going to give you the weekly finishes for this wide receiver: 76, 69, 50, 43, 76, 57, and 67. Why in the ever-loving heck are we ranking Keon Coleman as a wide receiver 43 in ECR? Tell me that. Why is he inside the top 50? Why is he on any roster? Why is he not droppable? Like, why?
You said since week 2. Well, what was week 1, Debra?
Oh, week 1. Week 1 was wide receiver 2. Can we spot the outlier, family? Can we? Yeah. Like, no, man. I can't. Keon Coleman's not playable. Even if we wanted to craft a positive narrative, the Miami's secondary versus perimeter wide receivers has actually been improving over the last few weeks, and they didn't trade. I thought Rasul Douglas is gone. They didn't trade him, and then you look at the coverage shell. It's horrible for Keon Coleman, man. Like, Miami has the 4th highest rate of too high versus too high. Keon Coleman, 14% target per route run rate, 0.82 yards per route run. It's not good. Like, I just don't understand like why Keon Coleman's even on fantasy rosters at this point. Like, have we not seen enough?
It's funny because I knew when you were reading the numbers that it wasn't Khalil Shakir's game log because I know he's been better than what you were saying. But I almost, when you said that you were going to have a receiver that you were going to discuss here, I almost thought it might have been Shakir because he has not been, that productive for fantasy managers either this year. Like 3 of the last 4 weeks, he's been wide receiver 53, 49, and 52. Excluding his bye week that he had in there. He had one game where he was wide receiver 6 this season, but even that game, it was just a down week in week 8 for the position because he was wide receiver 6 with 14.8 fantasy points. That's not that explosive, huge of a day. He does not have 100 yards receiving in a game this season. He's only topped 70 yards receiving in a game once this season, just 3 touchdowns. And this is with the Bills not having a very strong receiving core. So I look at Shakir ranked wide receiver 31. And I knew you weren't talking about him when you started reading the game logs, D-Bro, but I almost wondered if he was going to come up because I'm just I don't really want to be starting Shakir all that badly this week.
The ceiling's not high with Shakir. I will say he's a stable wide receiver 3. Against this same secondary in week 3, he was wide receiver 25. So I know he's living off of touchdowns. The volume's not amazing. If you're playing Shakir, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. It's probably 40 to 50 yards and you're praying he gets a touchdown. If he gets the touchdown, he's in wide receiver 3 territory. If he doesn't get the touchdown, then you're probably like, oh, good Lord, why'd I do this?
It's crazy that Josh Allen is a leading MVP candidate. The Bills are one of the best, strongest Super Bowl contenders in the AFC, and there is no pass catcher you want to use in this offense.
Yep.
Maybe Dalton Kincaid, but even Kincaid isn't getting heavy target volume.
No, he's
it's
not.
Just that they have this terrible, well, at least terrible for fantasy, everybody eats ethos in Buffalo. So we're seeing all these targets squandered on guys like Jackson Hawes and Dawson Knox, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, Tyrell Shavers. It's just kind of not desirable for all the pass catchers. You just want Josh Allen. That's it.
Yeah, Fitzy, I'll add on top of that. I think it has been terrible, man. That passing attack is honestly kind of limited. When teams can just sit in too high and then play downhill on them.
I know.
Where's the verticality? They have no field stretchers in this offense. None.
It does look like a Cliff Kingsbury offense.
Yeah. Horizontal raid in Buffalo, baby.
It's funny. I don't feel like Josh Allen should be the leading MVP, odds, but I don't know who else I would make the case for instead. The Chiefs have lost too many games, even though Mahomes has been great. Lamar's missed time. Burrow obviously out for most of the year. Drake May, is it a year too early yet? Is this going to be more of a next year thing? I'm it's not going to be a non-quarterback despite the people who enjoy to talk about Jonathan Taylor or whatever.
I got your MVP candidate right here, Worm. It's Matthew Stafford, baby. That's who it is.
Stafford has been on a real heater lately.
He's playing at an MVP level. They're going to win the West. He's going to win probably 12 games. He's playing some of the best statistical football of his career. It should be Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the odds right now, and my computer is being slow.
Where are the Patriots without May having the kind of season he is having, though?
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I would give consideration to May. I just wonder if people are he's 22, he's got plenty of time to win it in the future. But Allen has just won it last year, and they typically don't like to go back to back if they can avoid it. So that's kind of
Sam
going the other
Darnold,
direction.
dark horse.
Sam Darnold is absolutely in this conversation. Yes, he should be in this conversation.
If the Ravens had won one or two more games without Lamar and at least had the record, then I wouldn't, because Lamar's stats are insane this year. Then if he does lead them to the playoffs coming back, I can see it. But I just think he missed too much time to overcome somebody
too much time,
what Allen's numbers will be. So I don't think he's a real option. And I just. Yeah, I mean, May might not be a bad bet. Again, I can't get my computer to load it. So
it always comes down to as well, you got to have not only the wins and stuff like that. You have to put up the numbers too, because if you don't put up the numbers, it just
I just got to pull up actually now. So Allen plus 155 on Hard Rock Bet. Mahomes and May are both plus 400. Stafford plus 525. And then the next best is plus 1,400 for Darnold. Baker Mayfield had a case early in the year that's kind of fallen off. Herbert, I think with the offensive line stuff, is not going to get there, but I think he's been awesome this year.
Darnold at 14-1. I'm gonna have to put that in today.
I feel like Darnold, May, and Stafford are my favorite kind of range. Darnold's a lot lower than them in the odds, but I feel like that's my kind of favorite range to be looking at right now. For those, so interesting. Yeah, we'll see where that goes. Let's go to, speaking of Lamar, Ravens at Vikings. I have been saying this all week. I'm absolutely fascinated by this game. Lamar still shaking off the rust a bit, going up against Minnesota's blitz, and specifically Brian Flores' blitz, which probably the worst game of Lamar's career in the regular season was that Thursday night game against the Dolphins a few years ago against Brian Flores, where he looked awful. I cannot remember him ever looking that bad in any game of his entire career. So he's going up against that blitz in Minnesota, again, still shaking off the rust to a degree. On the other side, you have J.J. McCarthy, who, is going up against an improving but definitely still limited defense for Baltimore. McCarthy is improving but still limited himself. There have been turnovers going on, which has been kind of the key to the Ravens' turnaround on defense, has been forcing more turnovers. It's all just very fascinating for me to watch. I'm really, really intrigued by this. So I kind of just want to leave it a little more wide open for you guys and ask what the most interesting storyline in this game is for each of you. And Debra, I'll start with you. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say you want to talk about J.J. McCarthy.
Oh, we're sitting on the same limb, sir. Yes. Yeah, dude, I think it's JJ, man. Looking at, everybody wanted to bury him, looking at the ups and downs of his play, healthy, not healthy, all the soft benching BS that was making the rounds on social media because people are idiotic. I don't even understand that. It comes back to JJ, man. A big time game, and the Vikings have to keep winning if they want, shot at the playoffs. I don't think they're probably going to, really realistically have a shot at the NFC North. But if they want to make the playoffs, they got to keep winning, and JJ's got to keep improving, man. And he's been good or solid for fantasy in the two healthy starts. He's been QB 11 and QB 13. We've got rushing equity out of him. You've seen some of the passing highs and the lows. So a lot to improve here. And you talked about the Baltimore pass defense. They've shown some improvements, but still since week 5, 11th most passing yards per game, 4th highest success rate per dropback allowed. So that's just another fascinating stat line or storyline of this game. I want to see how JJ plays because I was quietly surprised, like how well he navigated pressure, what he did versus the Lions, but also you saw some of the shortcomings of things he still has to clean up. Like he airmailed a few short throws or when he was on the move and stuff like that. So left a lot of yards on the field. So JJ is definitely the guy or at least the storyline that I want to talk about here.
Fitz, Debra mentioned like the Vikings really need this game to kind of keep fighting for the playoffs. The Ravens really need this game to keep fighting for the playoffs. Like
true.
They lost for as little margin of error as they had. They lost even more of it when the Steelers upset the Colts and just get another win on their ledger. So it's a really, for two teams that are below 500, it's a really wildly important game.
It is. And and Debra, McCarthy has to just stop like thwarting his own drives. He's just, he could have even better fantasy numbers and actually like maybe even be a worthwhile fantasy starter. If like he's taken 14 sacks in 3 starts, sacks are drive killers. He's thrown 4 interceptions. He's fumbled 4 times. Like there are a lot of mistakes. So I'm not saying JJ McCarthy has played good. There have been some moments, but he has not played well in his 3 starts. So I'm more interested in where we are at with the Vikings defense and the matchup against Lamar. Like I want to know how we should look at Minnesota as a fantasy matchup the rest of the way, because coming into the season, we generally thought of the Vikings as a tough defensive matchup, but the Vikings defense not playing so well as of late. Coming out of the bye, the Vikings got blasted by the Eagles and the Chargers. That was weeks 7 and 8. Before the bye, they had made the Steelers and Browns offenses look pretty good in weeks 4 and 5. But last week, the Vikings got Andrew Van Ginkel back from injury, and he hadn't played since week 3. I am now convinced that Van Ginkel is just the linchpin of the Brian Flores defense. Like the Vikings did a really nice job of holding down the powerful Lions offense in Detroit last week. Detroit had 305 yards of offense, well below their average. I want to see how tough the Vikings make things on Lamar.
I wonder, I feel like a lot of the conversation this week, when talking about this game specifically in terms of the Ravens offense against the Vikings defense, has been about Lamar, and I've been a part of that. I wonder if this might just be kind of like I don't want to say surprise, but like if this just ends up being like a Derrick Henry, like all the way back, because he's had some explosive games lately, but it's felt more like against Miami, it felt more like he just wore him down late, right? Which is what Derrick Henry does. It didn't feel like he was just like dominating early. I wonder if this is a game where like Derrick Henry just does kind of come out of nowhere and has his best fantasy day since week 1, with all the attention being on Lamar, and obviously him opening things up for him. Maybe another week, post-injury, he had this extended break with the Thursday night game. Maybe Lamar's more mobile, which then helps open stuff up even more for Derrick Henry. The Vikings, I feel like if you can get past the initial tackler, like you can run on them, like, deep into the second level. I feel like this could be a Derrick Henry game, like when everybody's looking in a different direction, D-Bro.
Yeah, it's possible. And I think the part that I'll definitely hammer on there is Lamar's mobility, and another week back from the hamstring injury is going to be critical to that. Because if anybody watched, yes, Lamar 3 for 4 passing touchdowns. That was fantastic. His passing acumen was definitely there. He didn't look like Lamar Jackson. If you watch that game, he looked tentative to run. He was not looking to run. He didn't look as spry in the pocket. You could tell he was clearly not 100%. So to your point, I'm very interested to see what version of Lamar Jackson do we get. Is the hammy still not fully healthy and he's still a little bit tentative in the pocket? And then you got Brian Flores like teeing off on him on the blitz, and some of their run game concepts are more limited because of Lamar's hamstring. Or if he's healthier, we get more mobile Lamar, and that opens up things for Derrick Henry. But I think Lamar's health is going to play a huge factor in this on multiple levels.
100%. The offensive line has not been good this year, and so you need the mobility from the quarterback. That's why Tyler Huntley was so much better than Cooper Rush, is because he was more mobile and could, escape pressure.
That's a low bar to clear too.
It was a low bar to clear, but having a statue back there with this offensive line is simply not tenable. And
no, it's fair.
Lamar is not a statue, obviously, but I thought Lamar was slower even in September before getting hurt. Honestly, I remember during the Lions game, I texted one of my good friends who's a big Ravens fan. I was like, dude, does Lamar look slow to you? Like, what is going on here? So I feel like that's been a thing all year, and then obviously just kind of compounded with the hamstring injury. So again, I'm really fascinated by this game. What do you guys think? Ravens were -4.5 last I looked. Maybe it moved to -3.5. What do you guys think about that?
I never bet against the Vikings in US Bank Stadium.
I don't think the Ravens covered that. I think it's going to be very, very close.
I don't really think they cover it either. I think
this game's going to come down to who has the ball last.
It's -4 now. Yeah, I don't know if I would bet on the Vikings, but I don't want to bet on the Ravens.
I think the better. What's the total in this game, Worm? Is it still? Was it like 48
it was kind of high. I felt the last I looked. Let me pull that up.
I think if you're going to attack from a betting angle, I think the total is much more of a
49.
Yeah, I think the total is much more the playground than I'm willing to.
I like the under a lot, honestly.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm a big fan of the under. All right, Fantasy Pros listeners, this is for you. Fantasy Showdown combines fantasy football with stat-enhancing gear. That's point 1. Stat-enhancing gear you equip for your team. Point 2, you can start playing now. Start anytime and keep rolling through the playoffs. Point 3, you get 100 free pieces of gear with the Fantasy Pros referral. Again, stat-enhancing gear. Start playing now and 100 free pieces. Use code SHOWDOWNFP and go to fantasyshowdown.com/FP. Create your team, equip your gear, and get started today. Again, that's fantasyshowdown.com/FP. All right, guys, Browns at Jets. Oh boy, what a fun one. How high are you ranking Quinshon Judkins against a Jets defense that just traded away its best players, D-Bro?
Oof. Does the number exist? No, it's seriously like he's a low-end RB1. I've got him at RB12, but I think the conversation starts somewhere in the mid, to low RB1 range. I think the conversation, you can have a really good conversation of him versus Rico Dowdle. So, it's probably RB7, RB8 is where the conversation for Judkins starts. And, I mean, they just traded away their best run stuffer. And before that, with him on this defense since week 5, the Jets were still giving up the 5th most rushing yards per game, and they had the 10th lowest stuff rate. So, the rest of the season is going to be start all your fantasy options versus the Jets. They traded away their best corner. They traded away their best defensive lineman. Just fire up the options.
Fitz, what do you think? I mean, this is it feels like the vibes could deteriorate, very quickly in New York.
Definitely, but I've got Judkins RB11. I don't think he's in the same tier as Dowdle. We certainly like the matchup for Judkins, but he's averaged 3 yards per carry over his last 3 games, and he's had -2 receiving yards over his last 3 games. His passing game usage is just completely dried up. So I like Judkins, like the matchup. I just don't love the offensive ecosystem.
Was there anything else on this game I missed? I mean, like, I just didn't have any players that I really wanted to talk about here, honestly.
Nope.
Okay. No, I think it's pretty much it, man. Like, you want to start a lot of your parts and pieces, but good Lord, like, both these offenses are just borderline decrepit. The only thing I'll add edgewise here is I think this is quietly a good matchup for Breece Hall. If you look at what the Browns' run defense has been versus the perception, like the beginning of the season, they were stopping everybody and anybody. But since week 5, they've given up the 11th most the 11th most yards after contact per attempt and the 3rd highest missed tackle rate. So I will say I will be above consensus on Breece this week.
Last game of the early slate, Patriots at Buccaneers, looking lower down the rankings because some of these guys are very obvious starts, but looking further down. If you guys needed wide receiver help in week 10, would you rather start Tez Johnson or Demario Douglas in this game, Fitz?
Tez. Before the Buccaneers went on bye in week 9, Tez was wide receiver 24 in half-point PPR fantasy, scoring over his previous 4 games. He had at least 43 receiving yards in all those games, so like a pretty sturdy floor. No Mike Evans for the Buccaneers. It looks like Chris Godwin might not be back for a while. Look, I realized Demario Douglas had 100 yards last week, and he's weirdly become this guy who occasionally pops off for big plays after sort of being the polar opposite of a big play receiver the last couple of years, just this short area possession guy. But here's the thing. Douglas has played less than 30% of New England's offensive snaps in 7 of the Patriots' 9 games this season. And in each of the last 5, Pop Douglas hasn't played more than 17 snaps in a game since week 3. That's just nothing to hang your hat on. It's possible the Patriots give Douglas more snaps this week with Kayshon Boutte out, but Douglas is playing behind Stephon Diggs and Mac Hollins, and the Patriots have been talking about a bigger role for rookie Kyle Williams. And last week, Williams outsnapped Douglas 31-18. So the prop on Douglas is set at 41.5 yards at Hard Rock Bet, and the under is one of my favorite bets of the week.
Okay. That's a compelling case. I like Douglas more than you, but that's a good case against him. Zebra, what do you think?
17 or fewer snaps, man, for 5 straight. That's just not enough to make him reliable in fantasy.
Yeah, for anybody believing in Pop Douglas, Mac Hollins says hold your beer. So, I think he's going to get outsnap Douglas. Douglas last week only had a 32% route share. These numbers for Douglas last week are just not sustainable. Like, he had a 46% target per route run rate. He had a 31% first read share. Like, neither one of those numbers are at all replicable. And even if you wanted to just say, okay, well, what if Pop is a full-time player? Also, since week 5, Tampa Bay, 4th fewest PPR points per target to the slot, 11th fewest receiving yards per game allowed. This is Tez for me. On multiple levels. 1, he's playing more snaps, and 2, the matchup is actually, it's middle of the road, but he's been good versus too high coverage, which since week 7, New England, 59% of the defensive snaps have been too high. And since Tez Johnson, I know it's a small sample size here, is a full-time-ish kind of player in the Bucs passing attack, but since week 6, Tez Johnson against too high, 19% target per route run rate, 2.0 yards per route run. So this is Tez for me.
Okay. I guess I'm the odd man out on Douglas. I would still probably go Tez, but I see it as closer than you guys do. So we'll see how it plays out.
I think Mac will outscore him this week. I'll say that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't see it that way, but when I disagree with you, I tend to trust you. So we'll see how it goes. Cardinals at Seahawks. This is into the late afternoon slate on Sunday. With Jacoby Brissett, the starter in Arizona, moving forward, where are you ranking Marvin Harrison Jr., both in Week 10, which is against a very tough Seahawks defense, but also rest of season with this quarterback change, Debro?
Wide receiver 29 this week and wide receiver 28 rest of season. He's still a wide receiver 3. He's still going to be up and down. Like, as good as he's been at various times, he's still wide receiver 34 in fantasy points per game. He still only has earned an 18% target share. Tough matchup this week. So yeah, like, I think you can make a case he's a low end wide receiver 2 in some weeks, depending on the matchup. That is definitely not this week. Since week 5, Seattle has allowed the 14th fewest PPR points per target to perimeter wide receivers. So yeah, I mean, I think Marv is definitely going to get a bump because Brissett is better than Kyler Murray. And in the year 2025, I don't know if anybody would have walked into the year saying that that's the case, but Kyler's not played good over the last 2+ seasons.
Fitz, he is Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver 19 in half PPR, ECR? Is that too high, too low, or just right?
I mean, I've got him wide receiver 20. Like I understand Debro's skepticism, but like we're talking about a week with the Bengals, Cowboys, and Chiefs on bye. That's like 5 or 6 really good receivers who are out of the mix. So if those guys were playing, like I would have Harrison ranked as a high-end wide receiver 3. And that's kind of where I have him rest of season, wide receiver 26. So and I know wide receiver 20, like with Harrison having a tough matchup against Seattle, might seem a little lofty, but it's basically with the bye teams.
He's wide receiver 25 in rest of season consensus ranking. So right in line with you there. Debra, where is he rest of season ranking for you?
He is wide receiver 28. So yeah, I mean, I still got him in wide receiver 3 territory.
For this week, Debro, Marvin Harrison Jr. or Teteroa McMillan?
Oof.
They're 2 spots away in ECR.
I've legit got them back to back, and I think I'm probably going to flip them. I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. just based off of volume.
And Fitz, it sounded like you would take Harrison.
2 spots higher than Ted.
Yeah. All right, I want to let everybody know, speaking of receivers, if you want a chance to win a Justin Jefferson signed Vikings jersey for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Fantasy Pros app, leave a review for the podcast, or follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive. We will be announcing a winner on the podcast near the beginning of next month. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. All right, next game here, guys. Rams at 49ers. Fun game here. We talked about him earlier, Debro. Matthew Stafford has been on a heater. He is tied for QB 8 on the season in points per game, despite offering nothing as a runner. Give me a surprising name that you are starting Stafford over this week.
So I don't know if these are surprising, so I'm going to kind of like throw these at the wall here. I've got 2 or 3 names, and you guys tell me what you think. Is Jackson Dart over him surprising or not? I kind of feel like it's not, but
no.
I want to throw it out there. Daniel Jones, is that surprising?
A little.
Jones and Stafford are back-to-back in ECR.
Okay, so Daniel Jones, the Atlanta secondary is falling off. I think this is a good get-right spot. We've already talked about Alec Pierce and single high coverage and all that kind of stuff. Michael Pittman's playing amazing. The third name I was going to evoke in here is, I think you can make a pretty easy case for Jared Goff this week. I think the Lions come out and they are ticked off. This is one of those spots where they just run up the freaking score and drop like a 40 burger on the Commanders. So Goff is probably the surprising name, but I've got him and Stafford, like right back to back in rankings.
So I just want to clarify for the listeners that I think you took this question the reverse of what I intended it. I was asking who is somebody that you were starting Stafford over. That is surprising. Not that you're starting over Stafford. So it's totally fine, but I just want to clarify for the listeners that you're not saying to start Stafford over those guys. You're saying start those guys over Stafford.
Okay, so the flip side of that, I'll start Matthew Stafford over Caleb Williams, a player that we talked about earlier. I will easily start Matthew Stafford over him. I think the floor and the ceiling are definitively higher.
That's reversed from ECR, so yeah, that is a surprising one. Fitz, what do you think? Who would you start Stafford over? That might be a surprise to people.
I mean, I guess Caleb Williams, but I don't think that should be a surprise. I don't know. Is Baker Mayfield a surprising name? Like I have Stafford ranked.
That's the other name I was thinking of.
It is a surprise based on consensus.
Yeah, I've Stafford 8, and I just I don't think that's surprisingly high. I feel like that's the right ranking for him. I do wish I had ranked Stafford ahead of Bo Nix, who I had one spot
I was just going to
ask,
if you could go back in time and remember before you knew what happened in the game, would you have said Stafford over Nix? And it sounds like you said you wouldn't have.
Unfortunately not.
I debated those two in rankings all the way up to like kickoff, man. I was looking at him and I'm like, is Bo going to burn me? And he burned me.
Yeah, that's a tough one. All right, yeah. So we Stafford's been great all year. We like him this week. I think the fun times are going to continue. Let's go to the last game in the late slate here. Lions at Commanders without Jaden Daniels, who, by the way, is not going to get surgery, I guess, and could be back at some point this season. I don't know that makes a whole lot of sense for the Commanders and what I expect their record to be by the time he's ready to come back, but we'll see. Certainly not there this week. Without Jaden Daniels, if you had to be above consensus on one Washington Commander this week, Fitz, who would it be?
I don't know. Chris Moore. He'll play more snaps with Terry McLaurin out. Jalen Lane, more snaps for him. I think I'm ahead of consensus on both guys. I don't want to play any of the Commanders. I just think they're going to be a bug on the Detroit Lions windshield this Sunday.
I totally agree, which is why I put this question here. I was like, if I tried to force you to pick somebody and you sneakily just picked people who obviously nobody would be starting anyway.
He was deep in his bag, baby. I love it.
I mean, you couldn't pay me to start Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt this week, and then Debo, like if you're fading him, like who else are you even going to really Zach Ertz, maybe a tight end catches a touchdown. Like I don't know. So I'm with you there, Fitz. Again, that's why I asked the question. Debo, what do you think?
I just put Debo in here only because I firmly believe the Commanders are going to be trailing. Debo versus single high has not been good, and that's been one of the biggest struggles for the Commanders. They don't have, with McLaurin out, they don't have an answer for single high coverage. They literally don't have a guy that could beat on single high on that entire freaking roster. But if you want to have the glass half full approach with Debo, they're going to be trailing target volume, and Detroit has struggled against slot wide receivers, so that's the pro case for Debo.
Debo's wide receiver 22 though, like he's so high. I don't want to be above consensus.
I'm below consensus. 70, I know you're saying make the case for somebody.
I think I don't want to do it. I think Ertz is the right decision because tight end, you could catch a touchdown. If he gets a touchdown, he's probably going to be higher than tight end 16. So I think that's a better bet than anybody else. I mean, I'm not saying I want to rank him that highly, but I think that's a better bet than anybody else in this offense outperforming their ranking. It's ugly. So, it's ugly. Yeah, we can actually move on pretty quickly from that one. Let's go to Sunday Night Football. Steelers at Chargers. The Chargers' usual suspects are ranked in their typical ranges this week according to consensus, but I find myself worried, and I think a lot of people find themselves worried about an offensive line missing both tackles for the season going up against a Steelers pass rush that got it going a bit last week and obviously has a lot of talent in the front seven. So I'm wondering, Debro, if you're fading any Chargers players this week based on that matchup, or are you more kind of ranking them along the lines of ECR?
I'm not fading the Chargers players overall, man, but there is one that does stick out to me. Like Keenan Allen is wide receiver 33 in ECR right now, but the last 2 weeks he's wide receiver 48 and he's wide receiver 56 in weekly scoring. He's only had a 50% route share, so he's been splitting time with Trey Harris over the last 2 weeks, and his target share has dropped to 18%. Now, I'm not saying the matchup isn't good for him, and I'm not saying they haven't gone to him versus single high coverage. Going to see a crap ton of it this week, but based off of what he's doing and the fact that his route share has dropped, it is dropped the floor for him as a fantasy asset, and it's capped the ceiling over the last 2 weeks. So I have a hard time kind of and part of this is the bye weeks, but I think he's ranked a little too aggressively.
What do you think, Fitz? Are you nervous about the Chargers at all? I mean, it could be Keenan Allen, it could be somebody else. The total in this game is 45, just for what it's worth on Hard Rock Bet. But what do you think about this matchup for the Chargers offense?
I'm 2 spots below consensus on Justin Herbert, and it looks like I'm a little below consensus on Ladd McConkey. Right now I'm at consensus on Keenan Allen. Debro makes a great case. I think we should move him down. The other thing with Keenan Allen, like with Joe Alt out, maybe the Chargers play a little more 12 personnel, and they play like one of their tight ends who can actually block with Gadsden, who's more of a glorified wide receiver, which would mean a reduction in snap share, a further reduction in snap share for Keenan Allen. So with Herbert, Joe Alt did miss 3 games earlier this season, weeks 5, 6, 7. And we didn't really see an adverse effect on Justin Herbert's numbers in those 3 games, but 2 of those 3 games were against the Commanders and Dolphins, really good matchups. The other one was against the Colts, and that was that game where the Chargers fell into that deep hole and Herbert threw 55 passes for 420 yards and 3 touchdowns. But I do expect just overall a less functional passing game with Joe Alt out and maybe a less functional running game too. Like the Chargers did trade for Trevor Penning from the Saints, but like Alt's one of the best tackles in the league and Penning is just a, adequate starter.
I mentioned earlier that we got a lot of questions on Kyle Monangai on the Start Sit stream. We also got a lot of questions on Quentin Johnston, and we basically never, like Erickson and I don't think ever picked him as like pick 3 guys to start, and one of them was Johnston. We never went in that direction. He did get a touchdown in this last game. Obviously, he had no targets the week before, which kind of threw everybody off. You guys didn't really mention him here. Are you above or below consensus on Johnston? Just quickly, Fitz.
Where's he at in ECR Worm?
I think I'm 2 spots higher.
He's wide receiver 29 in ECR.
Oh, I'm way higher. I'm way higher on QJ this week. I've got him at wide receiver 23. I think So first of all, I think the Chargers injury reporting lies. I don't think that he was clearly not healthy. If you looked at his early season target shares, and I know Ladd was struggling during that and stuff, but still QJ was running away with target share. And then he just drops off the freaking map coming back from the hamstring injury, and then he bounces back last week. This coverage matchup is fantastic for him. Like weeks 1 through 4, he was their clear and easy wide receiver 1 versus single high coverage. Like he had a 25% target share versus single high. So I think if Herbert has time in the pocket, and I know that's a big if in this game, I think QJ is going to have a really good game.
We are starting something new in this show. Each week, we're going to be highlighting our favorite 3- and 4-star props from the Prop Bet Cheat Sheet ahead of Sunday Night Football. The cheat sheet is a wonderful resource for putting together your prop bets for the week, so we're going to start highlighting it on Sunday Night Football's matchup every single week. And we're going to highlight those 3- and 4-star props. If you want the 5-star props, you can go online and see those, which have a much higher hit rate. These have good hit rates too, though. I would strongly recommend checking them out. Deeber, I'll start with you. What is your favorite prop from the cheat sheet for Sunday Night Football?
Kenny Gainwell, baby. It's a 4-star bet on the prop bet cheat sheet. The over for his 15.5 rushing yards, and that you're going to have to kind of book shop here and stuff like that. It's anywhere from like 15.5 to I've seen it all the way up into the 20s. So definitely shop lines here. Our projections on the site have it his line at 25.1, and he's hit the over in 5 of 7 games as a backup, and the matchup is good on the ground.
Fitz, what's your favorite?
I picked Kamani Vidal under. So initially it was a 4-star cheat sheet bet at 58.5 rushing yards. It's down to 53.5 at Hard Rock Bet. And I still think the under is the right percentage play. I haven't noticed if we've downgraded that to like a 3-star play. But on this week's Start Sit Show, Jake Seeley and I argued about Kamani Vidal versus Breece Hall. And Jake said he preferred Breece by a mile. I said I slightly preferred Vidal just because he's in a better offense and has a better matchup. Like Hall gets the Browns. I know the run defense hasn't been quite as good lately, but it's still really good. And Jake did make a good point that Jared Patterson got involved for the Chargers, and maybe Vidal's snap share, which was at 72% last week, maybe it comes down a little bit. And the Steelers' run defense was good last week. They held Jonathan Taylor to 45 rushing yards and 3.2 yards per carry. So while I don't mind Vidal in fantasy, I think under 53.5 rushing yards seems like a pretty decent bet.
Still a 3-star bet.
Okay. I think you and Jake arguing on Vidal is the most actually argumentative I've seen the two of you in doing the show with you all
That
year.
was fun. I mean, it was like
it wasn't like angry, but
that
it was
is an
the most
absolute
legit
2025
disagreeing
moment
with each other.
Can any of us say from the summer that you would have fast forward and said at week 10 you're going to have an argument about Breece Hall versus Kamani Vidal?
Exactly.
Nobody would have predicted that. Everybody would have been like, nah, no way, man. No way.
So those are our top prop bets for Sunday Night Football this week, courtesy of Betting Pros. You can check out our NFL prop bet cheat sheet at bettingpros.com/props. Premium subscribers have access to those 5-star prop bets, which have a 58% win rate, and we're up 95 units through week 9. Luckily, we've also got a special offer for everyone to unlock a month of Betting Pros Premium for free. Download the Betting Pros app today and use promo code FP1month, that's the number 1 not spelled out, at checkout to redeem your offer. One more game on the slate here, guys. Monday Night Football, Eagles at Packers. Awesome game. Even with the Packers coming off of a dud, I think this is a really fun matchup, and I'm really excited to watch this. Except, oh wait, I can't watch it thanks to YouTube TV and ESPN. That's a conversation for another day. Eagles at Packers. I'm excited to follow this game, I guess, online. Fantasy-wise, there wasn't a ton here. I did want to ask just kind of the overall conversation of Tucker Kraft's injury and what it's going to mean for the Packers offense. Who is going to step up, Fitz? You are a Packers fan. You're very close to the team. Who is going to step up in Kraft's absence? Is it Luke Musgrave as backup tight end, or will it be one of the team's many different receivers who will see a boost in value just through getting more work, even if they're not a 1-to-1 replacement? Where do those targets go?
The Eagles are a pretty tough matchup for tight ends. I think they've allowed like the 4th fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends. So I don't expect Luke Musgrave to smash, but I'm cautiously optimistic that he shows us fantasy viability. Like it's easy to forget that Musgrave was actually drafted ahead of Tucker Kraft in 2023. Musgrave was a 2nd-round pick, 42nd overall. Kraft was a 3rd-rounder, 78th overall. Musgrave started 6 games as a rookie before Kraft made his first NFL start. And Musgrave is 6'6" and ran a 4.61 at the combine, which gave him a 94th percentile speed score. Like he's toolsy. So, and there's going to be some target spillover for Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson too. Like Doubs is pretty close to a must start this week, I think, and Watson flex worthy at minimum.
It's such a cliche to compare Musgrave and Kraft to Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews, but it really is like
kind of,
the earlier.
I got a tweet out there right after they were drafted saying exactly that. Yeah,
I mean, it was in the same round, so a little different. But the year that the Ravens took Isaiah Likely, they took Charlie Kohler earlier in that same round, so it's kind of similar. Where second tight end is sometimes better than the first. The Andrews Hurst is really the great comparison there. Debro, do you think Musgrave is, a possibility to step up here in Kraft's absence, or is it one of the receivers?
I think it's one of the receivers. I think, like Fitzy talked about the matchup. I think the matchup is rough for him. I honestly think like Romeo Doubs has not gotten enough love from people this year. Like what he's done and the fact that he's stepped up as the clear wide receiver one for the Green Bay Packers. Like Doubs has a 20% target share this year. He has 2.0 yards per route run. He has a 25% first read share. If you look at him and he's been coverage agnostic. Like he's been good versus single high and two high. And there's very few wide receivers you could say that are good versus both of these coverage shells. But Doubs is good versus both of them, like 2.0, 1.9 yards per route run against both of them. He's top 26 in both of those against both those coverage shells. So I think Jordan Love's going to lean on his number one guy a little bit more this week and moving forward. So Fitzy talked about Doubs as a must play. I mean, I think he's just a strong rest of season wide receiver. And I have been hesitant to say that about any Green Bay Packers wide receiver because of what LaFleur does, but I think this does kind of narrow the target tree some.
Just quickly before we wrap up, are you guys downgrading Jordan Love without Tucker Kraft?
No, because I think the scheme provides, and I think LaFleur is still gonna get it up. And Love has been playing so well this year, man. Just not a lot of volume.
Fitz.
Yeah, I mean, because of the volume, I kind of am. I've got him quarterback 15 this week.
All right. We'll go ahead and wrap things up there. We don't load along for everybody. Best of luck here in Week 10 and in your fantasy playoff pushes for Debro and Fitz. I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.